Welcome to Defining Dad Bod, where we work to untangle the messy knots of the health and fitness industry as if your children's lives depended on it. Because they do. This is where we decide to make our bodies stand for something bigger than ourselves. This is where we find practical wisdom to live by, one powerful conversation at a time. May the words spoken here inspire you to keep moving forward no matter where you are. Who knows who you could be if you could become 1% better every single day.
We can do the show thanks to the support of listeners just like you. For more information how you can become part of the inner circle, go to findingdadbod.com/inner circle.
What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing super well. Today's show is a different kind of show because it was recorded live in the inner circle of Defining Dad Bod. Every month, new members join the inner circle and ask their burning health and fitness questions so that I can help to make the science of this show practical to everyday life. And last month's questions were so good that I thought they should have their own show. Among other things, we get into the Mediterranean diet and how your health and fitness should change after age 40. We had some fantastic questions, and I hope you find the answers valuable. Before we get there, one, I want to say thanks to the.mckee for another amazing 5-star review on iTunes for Defining Dad Bod. She said, consistently relevant. It's apparent that Alex is an above and beyond thinker. Every show gives me new ideas to chew on and a more dimensional perspective on my own fitness. Keep chewing, girl. I appreciate your review. And if you haven't reviewed the show yet, I would really appreciate it if you went to iTunes, scrolled to the bottom, and clicked Write a Review. Let us know the value that Defining Dad Bod has brought to your health and fitness journey. And by doing so, you'll make it easier for other people to discover what we're doing when they go looking for answers in the podcast world. And two, the other piece of housekeeping, June 1st is the start of the Faithful 40 Challenge. Registration is already closed. However, if you want to join the Defining Dad Bod Inner Circle and either participate in the thread every day or be a fly on the wall to get some inspiration from the daily mindset, nutrition, and exercise posts that everybody's making, we'd still love to have you. You can join the group at definingdadbod.com/inner circle. Watch for the daily accountability posts and feel free to engage with them if you'd still like to be a part of it. In the Faithful 40, we are faithfully journaling mindset, nutrition, and exercise for 40 days as a community. In doing so, hopefully we can hold ourselves accountable to controlling our controllables in our world and to encourage one another to keep getting 1% better every single day. Our first Faithful 40 challenge was very valuable, and the 37 participants who jumped in last time said they wanted to see it happen again. So this time around, 50 brave souls have raised their hands to join the Faithful 40, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what difference it makes in their health and fitness journey. Again, if you want to be a fly on the wall or join in with us, that's definingdadbod.com/inner circle. Now, without further ado, I bring you last month's live Q&A from the Defining Dad Bod Inner Circle. Welcome to April's live Q&A here in the Inner Circle. Every month, I go live to answer the questions of those of you in the Inner Circle who are submitting questions to me to hang out with. And I'm coming to you raw and live. You can see I've got nothing special on my green screen here, and I'm excited to hang out with you and answer your questions. So what we do is in the Inner Circle, if you join at definingdadbod.com/inner circle, we allow new members of the Inner Circle to submit their questions. And then obviously anybody who's joining us live, you're very welcome to drop your questions here in the live comments, and I'm happy to answer those as we get rolling here. And so I field those every single month. Usually it's Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I was a little late this morning. My wife and I enjoyed a weekend night and a weekend day today without our kiddos, courtesy of GPA and Gamma. So thank you very much, GPA and Gamma. If you guys are watching, which they're probably not, I don't imagine they do Facebook Lives very much, but a reprieve from our 4-year-old and 1-year-old is very welcome. So I apologize for the tardiness, but I'm excited to dive in. We've got some really cool questions. So the 4 that were submitted ahead of time, and then again, if you're joining us live, I'm happy to answer your questions. The 4 that were submitted ahead of time were, when are we going to do the Faithful 40 again? So I want to talk to you about that. I'm excited to talk about that. Then what differentiates Defining Dad Bod's philosophy, nutrition-wise, from the Mediterranean diet? And so I'll talk about that. I think that's a great question. Then another listener asked, what needs to change about my workouts after age 45? So she's past age 45 and she wants to talk about what considerations there are in her workouts past age 45. And then last but not least is hormonal health. We have a new member of the inner circle who works specifically, as I understand it, with counseling from a psychological perspective. And she is interested in the underlying nutrition and exercise changes somebody might make to help their hormones get aligned with their mental well-being could be a good way to put it. And so I'm excited about that question. I think that's a pretty powerful question. And I've addressed hormones several times with the Defining Dad Bod content, so I imagine that'll bring up some cool stuff. Now, I'm looking at this new live interface here on Facebook, and I can't tell whether or not you have the ability to drop questions here. So my hope is that you can do that. So we're diving into our listener questions from April, and I'm excited to dive into those with you because they're really good questions, and I think that it'll generate some great discussion and conversation. So first, we have the Faithful 40. The question was, when are we doing this Faithful 40 thing again? Are we doing it again? Please restart it. This question has come up in several forms and fashions. Several people have reached out to me and told me, hey, this Faithful 40 challenge has been really valuable to me. It's helped me stay on track. I've enjoyed sharing my mindset, exercise, and nutrition journal, so to speak, in living form every day. If it's been impactful to you, let me know on this live video. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in your likes and stuff. What has it meant to you? Because a lot of people have reached out and said, can we please do this again? It's been valuable and I want to do it again. So that being said, short answer, yes, we will do this again. How quickly or not we will do this again has a lot to do with the next week of my life. So that being said, if you want to do the Faithful 40 again, let me know. Say something about it here in the live video comments, and I'll take your interests, I'll take your thoughts and stuff, and I'll go live next weekend to talk specifically about the Faithful 40 because we have 6 days left in the challenge. If you've been in the Faithful 40 challenge, you know that every single day I've tagged you in a post that says #Faithful40, day 1, day 2. Share with us your mindset for today, like what you're walking into the day thinking. What's your objective today? What's your purpose? What's your mantra? Is there a Bible verse that really matters to you? Is there a quote that's like reverberating in your head? Some of you have just said a word like survive. I'm going to survive today. There you go. I've had those days too, for sure. Share your mindset. Then exercise. Share what you plan to do for exercise today. It doesn't always mean that it happens. Sometimes life happens and exercise didn't happen. Some of you even commented on the post while you were exercising, which was kind of fun, like right in the middle of leg day. #deadlifts, right? And then last but not least, I asked about your nutrition every day. So I asked you to share your journal from yesterday. And some of you have listed out your journal. Some of you have pasted a snapshot of your MyFitnessPal summary or something along those lines. And so that being said, it's been valuable. It's been valuable to me. I've really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed engaging with you guys. I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. I've enjoyed sharing my stuff. In some instances, has been really helpful to me in order to stay committed and disciplined about my own stuff. And I originally started this because of what we're all experiencing with COVID-19. We're experiencing different things in different ways, that's for sure. But to my knowledge, in my lifetime, nobody's ever experienced all of this all together. And right now, there are a lot of uncontrollables. And one of the things that we can control with regard to ourselves is our exercise, our nutrition, and our mindset. We can approach each day with those. And so the goal of the Faithful 40 was to bring us together in the sense that there's a community feeling to doing well by our mindset, our exercise, and our nutrition, our controllables, well, not perfect, but well, and the discipline of encouraging each other and keeping each other accountable in that process. And so that's what it started with. Now, I'm hoping that a year from now, we won't be dealing with the same things we're dealing with right now. Yeah, it's a larger conversation. I've talked about that elsewhere. But I do know that what we've done with the Faithful 40, whether it was by accident or on purpose, it's been valuable. And I think it's valuable in and of itself to connect as a group, to connect as a community, and to commit ourselves to regular reporting to each other and regular accountability and spontaneous encouragement. Like, none of you are getting paid to go through comments and say, hey man, I see that you're doing a great job with your nutrition. Keep up the good work, progressing. Way to get more protein in your life, for sharing recipes back and forth. It's just been really, really cool. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the community around that, and I want to continue that atmosphere. So long story short, we will do this again. We will likely do this again within the next month. I need a little bit of a break. I need to reevaluate things and make it better and more streamlined. I want to add some resources to the process, and I want to get some feedback from you guys. So we've got 6 days before the Faithful 40 officially ends. I plan to go live to give some shout outs, to give some accolades, to talk through what it's meant to me. I might even do it on the mobile platform so that if we do a live, you can actually hop on and join me. I haven't done a lot of that with Facebook, and sometimes reception and internet makes that really shoddy, but we can try it. Anyway, the point is, I would like your feedback. I'd like to know, how can we make the Faithful 40 better? How can we make it more valuable and helpful to you? What resources might you like to see with that? I've had a few people say they'd like to see a regular Zoom call. I've had a few people say that, even if this had to be a paid service or paid process, they'd like to see some resources around exercise, for instance. And, those are all options. Those are things that we can do with this. But the spirit of it is connecting as a community to keep each other accountable and to encourage each other in the things we can control. And at least in the scope of Defining Dad Bod, that's our mindset every day, our exercise plan today, and our nutrition journal from yesterday. And it's been great. It's been valuable. So let me know what that looks like to you. I have a few people joining and jumping on. If you're hanging out with us, thanks for joining us on our live Q&A here. So let's dive into the rest of these questions. Faithful 40, yes, we will do it again. It'll probably be within the next month. I will go live next week to bring that to bear and to tell you about what I've heard from you guys and what I plan to do about it. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Gene says he really appreciated my Zoom class. Yeah, it was good over the hormones. We did a hormone mastermind back in August of last year. And we might do something like that. Again, I don't mean to sound so amorphous here, but as you know, the world's kind of changing really fast. And so it's hard for me to tell you what we're doing next month. But I believe that there is room for another one of those classes, particularly with regard to the True Fit series, if you've been following that on the podcast. So to the questions. Let's start with the age question here because Jared Lagnus actually threw down something here as well that's related. So the original question from the listener was, how should my workouts change now that I'm older than 45? Is there anything that should change about what I'm doing with my workouts? And then Jared Lagnus, if you haven't hung out with Jared, I've mentioned him last Q&A. Great guy, master trainer. I got to work with him in Colorado Springs. He does a great job with his clients, and he's also a mentor of trainers. Love this guy to death. So his question kind of revolves around the similar thing here. He says, if this is too long to answer, don't sweat it. But as we get into our 30s and 40s and we find it harder to keep in shape because of our life responsibilities, is it because of those life responsibilities, or is it because of something chemical or something else? Like, what's the deal? Why is it harder to stay in shape as you get older? So these two questions are related in my mind. And if you've hung out with me long enough, I probably make things a little more complicated than they need to. And I don't even know if you know how I approach these Q&As. I don't sit down beforehand and write out what I'm going to say. I sit down and I read the questions that have been submitted. And then I think, there's a lot to that question. What are the primary things I'd like to make sure I touch on? And then I just talk it out with you. So I apologize if that's a little meandering, but I think it's important for you to hear my thought process there and to see what it brings up for you. So after age 45, there are a bunch of different considerations. And this question to me splits into 4 parts. So the first question is, does age matter? Yes or no? So yeah, it does. Age does matter. I hear people say often age is just a number. And I know what they mean when they say that, but at the same time, there are some considerations around being a biological entity that's getting older. Okay? I don't care who you are. If you're listening to me right now, 10 years ago, you were more youthful. Things were likely less achy and creaky. You woke up faster. You recovered faster. There's a reason we say youth is wasted on the young, right? And I'm saying this as somebody who's probably in the young category. I'm 31. Some of you guys joining me here are considerably older than me. And so that being said, age does matter. However, it doesn't matter as much as some people might think, right? So I have a client I'm working with right now. I've been working with her for 7.5 years, okay? She and I have been working together for a long time. We met in person in Dallas a long time ago, and now I work with her remotely in the online coaching space, and we've gotten close enough that she actually comes to my house every few months and stays with me and my kids and my wife, and she's been a big part of our family and stuff, and I've worked with her for a long time. The reason this is relevant is because she's 65 years old. When we started working together, she was 58. When we started working together, her original goal was, I'd like to learn how to run. So in the course of her life, at age 58, she had never actually run before. Not as a discipline, she's probably run somewhere. I was late to a train and had to catch it. I don't know who does that anymore. But anyways, she's 58 years old, has never made running a discipline. And so she wanted to learn how to run. And so in our very first session, I got her on the treadmill and I turned it up to like 4.2 miles an hour. And she started, doing her running thing. And because she didn't have any injuries that would keep her from running. She'd just never run before. And so we went through that process. So fast forward 7.5 years, okay? She's run a marathon. She regularly puts down a 10 to 13 mile run every Saturday. That's her me time, her exercise time. She enjoys that. It's really meditative for her. And she can jump on a 30-inch box. Okay, a 30-inch box from standing. She can jump beautifully and land softly, and she doesn't get injured doing that, right? So she deadlifts 1.75 times her body weight, okay? She can do 4 pull-ups. She's 65 years old, right? And in the gym setting, she makes a lot of people half her age look stupid. It's really all there is to it. She's 65 years old. She makes a lot of people in their 30s look dumb. So the question is, does age matter? Yeah, it matters. However, it doesn't mean that there aren't new physical heights that you can achieve through your health and fitness, right? And similarly, that doesn't mean that there are new body composition goals that you can't achieve during your health and fitness. This specific client, she's 65 years old and 13% body fat. Now, I'm not saying every woman at age 65 should strive to be 13% body fat, but this lady's got some guns, man. She's jacked. I want to be just like her when I grow up. And all that to say that after age 45, there are considerations, and I'll talk to you about those in a second. There are considerations you need to make about your health and fitness and how your program might change as you progress in your age. But whether or not age is a limiting factor in your ability to manifest better in yourself, that's an open question. And I think most of us could wake up every single day, look ourselves in the mirror and say, you've got more than you're giving me right now. I don't care how old you are. That's probably true of everybody I've ever met, right? So that being said, does age matter? Yes or no? Yes, it matters. We'll talk about the matter in a second. But as far as whether or not you can manifest better physically for yourself, I don't think age should have a very big stopgap or limiting factor on whether or not maybe you could do a pull-up someday, whether you can do a cartwheel or not, whether you could run your mile time faster, whether you should train for a marathon, whether you can walk again. I've worked with people who haven't walked in 10 years. Like haven't gotten out of their wheelchair and walked. Does it matter if you're 50, 60, 70? It definitely has a part to play in how quickly I'll progress you in your program. But can I walk? Yes or no? Only you can answer that question. And I don't think age is the factor there. And we've got some people on here who know better than I do from experience. They're in their 60s. Some of them are in their 70s, and they could tell you. They could tell you exactly what their experience has been achieving health and fitness in their later years. And there are some people in this group who are in better shape now in their 50s and 60s than they've ever been in their entire life. They would tell you that. I've spoken with them. One who comes to mind is Gene Fleming. If you're still listening, brother, knuckle bump across the way, man. You're leading the way. You're showing us. He would tell you, I'm in better shape now than 20 years ago. And he runs the podcast Pushing 60 Aside. Fantastic guy. Awesome mentality. Really just amazingly motivational person. Love him to death. And he has an awesome story. If you haven't gotten an opportunity to listen to that interview on the show, it would be awesome to hear that. I'll post the episode link because I'm getting me a little sports tear just talking about you, dude. But anyway, that being said, his fitness journey has helped other people in their 70s and 80s achieve better health and fitness than they thought possible. So I wanted to make sure I said that. Now let's get to the science of how age affects you, biologically speaking. So there are a few factors, right? One, as you get older, you recover slower. That's just reality. So I have a 4-year-old, right? He runs into the wall. That's what 4-year-olds do. And they're like, oh yeah, dad, bam. And they run to the wall. So he bruises himself regularly. Like if you have young boys, you know that they just have bruises all over their shins. They have bruises on their arms. They have bruises on their face. Why? Because they're running into things regularly, right? But he can have these bruises. And then tomorrow he wakes up and there are no bruises. There's no physical indention where he has hurt himself. And I can bruise my shin on the side of the bed. And that stupid thing will be there for the next 5 days. And the question is, why is that? Why does a 4-year-old get bruised today and is healed tomorrow? And why does a 31-year-old take 5 days to heal from a similar problem, right? And the reality is a few things. One, when you're young, your cells proliferate faster and differentiate faster. So you're growing. You have a lot of growth hormone in your body. And because of that, you actually recover much faster. So you have damaged tissue. You, run your shin into the bed or whatever, and there's a bruise. You have damaged tissue. And then the cells around it say, hey, we need to fix this as fast as possible. Well, there's a lot of growth hormone available in a young child's body. And so they're recovering much faster. Their cells proliferate and differentiate faster. The old cells that are damaged die faster, and then they're replaced, and then everything, moves on as it's going to. And I use the bruise. I know this isn't the question. It's fitness, right? People are asking about health and fitness goals. I use the bruise because that is a direct analogy to how adaptation happens from your workouts. So similarly, if my son jumps off of something, rolls and pops back up, and then he practices it over and over again today, tomorrow when he wakes up, his body will have recovered from that way faster than I would have. And I don't have my 4-year-old deadlifting regularly, but the same applies to the deadlift. So if I deadlift at age 18 and I go heavier in this workout, then I'm ready to deadlift again much faster than at age 30. And again, much faster than at age 60. I recover faster the younger I am. And this has significant implications into our later years when we're talking about our health and fitness, because the concept of progressive overload, this is a training concept that means in order to grow muscle tissue, grow strength, grow power, grow endurance, grow resilience, grow flexibility, in order to grow a fitness ability, you have to progressively overload it. You have to apply a stressor that you can recover from, that biologically speaking tells your cells, tells your tissue, tells your mind, neurologically, it tells you all around, you're not good enough yet. You're not strong enough, you're not endurable enough, you're not powerful enough, you're not good enough to handle this stress you just dealt with. And so what happens is, after you apply that stressor, that weight in your deadlift, that pull-up, that 30-second plank, whatever it was, after you apply that stressor, your body internalizes that, and over the next 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on how long it takes you to recover, your neurological system is more integrated, your musculoskeletal system becomes a little stronger, your tissues become a little more resilient, your ligaments and tendons become a little denser, yada, yada, yada. These are the exercise adaptations that happen, right? That's called progressive overload. And that's true no matter what age you are. And progressive overload is a principle that applies to more than just exercise. Progressive overload applies to how you learn in your job, and progressive overload applies to intellectual ability. You learn by adding harder and harder things until you get to a certain point where even the stuff that used to be a challenge to you just happens in the back of your mind. It's really fast and easy, right? So progressive overload is a principle that applies no matter how old you are. Now the question is, how does that change as I age? And this particular listener's question was, I'm over age 45. How should my workouts change? How does that change as I age? And the answer really is, you don't recover as quickly, and more intense progressive overload is more likely to be injurious. You don't recover as quickly, and more intense progressive overload is more likely to be injurious as you get older. It takes more time, therefore, to reach your goals. You want to be stronger, you want to lose fat faster, burning it as a fuel source, you want to get stronger, you want to get more flexible, whatever. The same goal at age 30 would have taken less time than the same goal at age 60. That's basically what that means. If you had the most intelligent program possible for you that pushed you just to the limit of injury but let you recover, and pushed you just to the limit of injury and then let you recover without injury, then that being said, what's the difference between age? The difference really is how quickly you can recover, because the body can't recover as quickly as it could in its 60s as it did in its 30s. And this is true of everybody. This is the universal truth of biology, at least until we solve the problem of aging, right? It takes longer to repair oxidative damage. It takes longer to repair osmotic damage at a cellular level. It takes longer to repair damage at a cellular level as we age. And we hit our prime somewhere between 20 and 30. Depends on who you talk to and what fitness ability you're talking about. But we hit our prime somewhere between age 20 and 30. And prime doesn't mean best. Prime means we hit our peak recovery ability between ages 20 and 30. What's really cool about that is, especially in the endurance sports, because the intensity doesn't have to be so high, you can actually achieve greater primes in endurance later on in life and years. Like ultra marathoners, they hit their prime somewhere in their 30s and 40s, whereas power lifters hit their prime somewhere in their 20s, because it's really, really hard to get much stronger then you're strongest, because strength is an intensity measure. Whereas endurance, the intensity can be lower, but volume can be increased. Anyway, I'm digressing. The point is, the listener asked, how does my fitness need to change after 45? Here's some quick and dirty principles. Be careful about how frequently you exercise and how intensely you exercise at that frequency. Make sure that you have enough rest days. That's extremely important, because if you're exercising intensely too often, you will break your body down. And you might have been able to get away with it when you were 20. You might have been able to get away with it when you were 30, but you won't get away with it forever. Your program has to be a lot more intelligent. We say work smarter, not harder. And I like to say, if you want to work harder, I won't begrudge you that. As we get older, we have to be more intelligent about how often we exercise and how intensely we exercise. And I wish there was a blanket statement I could make about that. I wish I could say, if you're 40, you should only do 3 hours of weight training a week at this intensity, and that would be best. It's different for every person. The best thing I can tell you is that you, compared to you as you were younger, compared to you as you were older, you need to be careful about your frequency and intensity of exercise, because you will recover more slowly as you age. The second thing you need to consider is that you will lose your fitness abilities faster as you age. So I've worked with 20-year-olds who could take an entire month off of lifting, could take an entire month off of running, could take an entire month off of regular yoga practice or gymnastics, and then the next workout they could come back and they could actually perform better than when they took their break a month ago. Like their VO2 is higher, their strength is higher, they haven't lost anything. It's like riding a bike, as they say. Why is that? Well, your fitness abilities degrade without practice. The adaptations you've created degrade without practice at a certain rate. The younger you are, the less quickly they degrade. So if you've been exercising regularly, you've been running, your VO2, your ability to move oxygen is nice and high. At 20, if you just stop exercising for a little while and then pick it back up, your VO2 is probably very similar as it used to be when you were training regularly. In your 60s, if you stop running and a month later pick it back up, your VO2 is significantly lower than it was a month ago. And you'll notice it. You'll notice it immediately. You're like, I used to be able to run a 15-minute mile, and now I can barely run. or whatever. The degradation happens at different rates for different people. But this is something that I find on average with clients is a truth everybody needs to know. The older you get, the more important your consistency is in your workout programming. The older you get, the more important your consistency is in your workout programming. Because when you stop exercising, the adaptations you created disappear faster as you get older. And that's a truth. That's actually a corollary of the biology of recovery. Remember, I said you recover slower as you get older. The adaptations that you achieve are adaptations of recovery. So if you stop exercising regularly, the older you get, the faster you lose ground. That's an important corollary. So to the person who asked specifically, how should your workouts change after age 45? You need to make sure that you're focused on consistency. There will be more intense repercussions for you if you pick up your fitness and put it down in your 40s, 50s, and 60s versus what would have happened to you in your 20s and 30s. So how should your fitness change? Consistency matters more than intensity. There we go. Took me like 20 minutes to say that. Sorry. But consistency matters more than intensity. You won't recover as quickly. You'll lose your fitness abilities faster. And, well, that's not good. You don't want that, right? The last thing I would have to say about this to the person who asked is your goals will likely change as you get older, and it's important to revisit them. I'm not saying your goals when you're younger are stupid. I'm just saying that they change. So in my 20s, I was really interested in, curls for the girls and looking great in the mirror and all that stuff. And I'm not saying those are vapid and shallow, but 31-year-old Alex would say, hey, I want to make sure that I maintain a certain look for competence in the mirror. And I mean, this is defining dad bod. I'm going to pass on these things to my kids. It really matters how they see me, right? To me. But as I've gotten older, and when I had kids, for instance, I started thinking about things like keeping up with them on the playground, and strangely thinking this far in the future, keeping up with my grandkids, right? I pictured being able to run a marathon with my son. Well, he's not running a marathon at age 4, but he will probably run a marathon later in his life. The dude's a running machine. What kind of shape do I need to be in 20 years from now to keep up with that kid? And so my goals shift and change as I grow and mature. And similarly, it's likely your goals have shifted and changed as you've grown and matured. So I think it's important to revisit that pretty regularly, if nothing else, at least every year, because the things that are important to you will shift and change from a health and fitness perspective as you get older. And I think it's important to make sure that's in writing and that your workout program reflects those changes. So that's kind of a side note, but still extremely important. A good program starts with a great vision. And you have to have a great vision to understand what it is that you're even working toward, or what you're working toward not losing might be another way to put it. So thanks for that question. I think it was powerful. I hope that was thoughtful and valuable as an answer. And good luck. Good luck with fitness after 45. And high five to those of you who are showing us the way, as aging gracefully doesn't detract from your health and fitness. So next question. How does Defining Dad Bod's nutrition philosophy differ from the Mediterranean diet? I really like this question. I like this question partially because the Mediterranean diet doesn't exist. Wait, what? Yeah, you could Google that. Google Mediterranean diet, and there will be guidelines and all that stuff. But one of the things I love about the Mediterranean diet is nobody made it up. The Mediterranean diet actually came out of a practice of a people in a region. The Mediterranean diet. It's like in the Mediterranean area, this is what people eat. and that's pretty cool because a lot of diets that you read about are created. I don't know, the South Beach diet, the Atkins diet, the Weight Watchers diet. They're created. People have thought, what would be best for people to eat for weight loss? What would be best for people to eat, I don't know, for cost? What would be best for people to eat for convenience or whatever? The Mediterranean diet is an observational diet. It's not a created diet, right? So what is the Mediterranean diet? Basically, it's the emphasis of fish intake as an animal product over other animal products, right? It's also the emphasis on healthy fats. So in the TrueFit series, we've talked about healthy fats, what differentiates a healthy fat from an unhealthy fat. It's actually pretty complicated. It took us 2 entire episodes to get through that information. And so it's an emphasis on healthy fat sources like fish and olives and, I don't know, avocados over, I don't think they have avocados in the Mediterranean, but emphasizing those fats over your processed fats and even saturated fats from other animal products, right? And then, interestingly, with the Mediterranean diet, there's an emphasis on things like red wine. Red wine being, you know, in general, you would think adding alcohol to a diet would be an overall net detractor. I've talked about the effects of moderate alcohol consumption on testosterone, for instance. It's not good. Consuming ethanol isn't good for your testicles. Bad juju, right? Or at least in amounts that we've talked about. I think 7 to 10 drinks a week is just below the threshold of what they tested in the mice that lost half of their testicular mass from the consumption of alcohol and, you know, psychological issues of alcoholism notwithstanding, right? So that said, the Mediterranean diet actually emphasizes the consumption of red wine, especially dry red wines, in the pursuit of health. And so the question is, how does the Defining Dad Bod nutrition philosophy, which I don't know if I would call anything we've done around here a diet, so to speak, but how does the nutrition philosophy differ from those tenets of the Mediterranean diet? I would say that there's a difference between what we should eat and what we are eating. And there's a difference between what we should eat for health and fitness versus what we should eat for quality of life or enjoyment of life, right? And this is actually a very interesting philosophical question for me. I'll get past the philosophy to the practical since I spent so much time talking about age-related exercise and just give you some tenets. One, I love the emphasis on the intake of seafood as a category over other animal products. I don't have a problem with you eating beef and chicken thighs and turkey and bacon. I don't have a problem with that. However, what I've talked about again in the TrueFit series with regard to fats is how the Western diet, the way the West goes about their diets, especially if you ask somebody to increase their protein, is we are very heavy in omega-6 fatty acids compared to omega-3 fatty acids. There's a huge body of research that suggests that there's an extremely important part of our diets, important part of creating good cells, important part of brain health that requires an emphasis on omega-3 fatty acids. And the way the West generally deals with this is you can keep your pork, you can keep your bacon and your barbecue and your brisket and your steaks and stuff, but supplement with a fish oil. That'll help. If you are eating a 30-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and it would be better for you, genetically speaking, to eat a 3-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, then your fish oil is not helping much in the pursuit of getting more omega-3. So I really like that tenet of the Mediterranean diet. Personally, for me, I eat fish just about every day. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, those are extremely high omega-3 sources that aren't very high on the food chain. They don't have a lot of mercury in them. So I recommend those pretty regularly to people. I'm also a big fan of bivalves like oysters, mussels, and even scallops, but oysters and mussels in general because of their nutrient content. I emphasize that pretty regularly. I know not everybody has a taste for that, and some people have allergies to those things. But by and large, if you can eat those things regularly, I think it would be helpful to develop a taste for them. That would be the best way to put it. And for me in my life, 10 years ago, those protein and fat sources have largely replaced things like, I don't know, boar's head lunch meat, or beef jerky. I used to have beef jerky packs in my pantry, and I would eat those when I needed something convenient versus opening some sardines, throwing some seasoning on them, and eating them with a fork instead, right? Now, the smell gets to my wife. She asks me to clear out my can and put that in the trash or whatever. But what's really interesting is a lot of people find it surprising that my boys love sardines and oysters and salmon, and they're like, they like that stuff. I'm like, they don't know any better. Dad's eating it. They ask for some. Like my 1-year-old follows me around the house and is like, bite. Doesn't matter what I'm eating. He wants to eat some of it, and he'll like take a bite and consider it, and then he'll say bite. So I promise I'm not starving my kid. He wants to eat whatever I'm eating. I don't know what hunger cue that is, but he's got it. Anyway, all that to say, I love that about the Mediterranean diet. And there are reasons to suggest that emphasizing fish proteins and fish fats or seafood fats might have something to do with the hormonal balance of a person, how well their mitochondrial function happens, how well their body's powerhouses output ATP, and how easily their body can succumb to oxidative damage. Those things can be significantly influenced by the amount of omega-3s in their diet. And I say fish products specifically, or seafood specifically, because there are plant sources of omega-3. We're just really bad at converting them. So ALA in ground flaxseed is an omega-3 fatty acid, but it's not quite as long as DHA and EPA, right? So imagine EPA and DHA are this long as a chain, microscopically, but just for the sake of argument, ALA is this long as a chain. And our body requires this long as a chain of omega-3s to make much of a difference. And we can only convert the ALA from plants so efficiently. I think something like only 10% of ALA from plants can actually be converted to the eicosapholinoleic acid and I forget what the I'm going to mess that up. Dehydrox, whatever. DHA and EPA, it's hard for us to convert ALA to DHA and EPA. We do like 10%. And the other 90% of those omega-3s are actually used as fuel rather than constructed into our cells. And so that being said, we, as a species, have outsourced the problem of omega-3 synthesis to other life forms. So sardines eat algae. That's where they get omega-3s from. They synthesize that and concentrate that omega-3 into their own fatty acids. And then when you, as a human being, eat them, you get the benefit of all the hard work of the sardine's life. And therefore, you can integrate that into your really intelligent brain and get smarter and smarter, right? So anyway, I like that tenet of the Mediterranean diet. Now, asking about the emphasis of healthy fats, again, I've talked about that elsewhere. I think it's worth looking into. Then we come to the emphasis on red wine intake. Now, a lot of people would take this as carte blanche to introduce and keep alcohol sources in their diet on a regular basis. The Mediterranean diet doesn't necessarily argue for that. What it does argue for is the use of antioxidants, carotenoids, and other plant flavonoids to be positive and powerful in the health and longevity of a person. And I love that. I think it's something we don't talk enough about in the nutrition world, frankly, because we don't understand it very well. So for instance, my wife is working with a company called Pomifera, and Pomifera does skincare products. They use something called an hedge apple, an Osage orange. They come out of Iowa. A lot of people think of them as trash, but there's an oil extracted from them that has some amazing antioxidant properties. And without getting into the chemistry too deeply here, it's really interesting to read about like huge, giant articles, 300 citations long, of the flavonoids in plants and how they interact with our skin cells, how they interact with our body at the level of the DNA, how they interact by protecting us from microbes and antioxidants and stuff. And some people get really hokey and crunchy with this stuff, and you see it now with the coronavirus, like eat enough oranges and you're going to be fine. Like there's obviously a line to the utility of that stuff, but the Mediterranean diet does actually champion some of that stuff. And that's not something you hear about in other diets. It's like, eat enough protein, minimize these carbohydrates, eat enough healthy fats, and you're good. What about those compounds that actually protect us from harmful microbes that might reduce oxidative damage, that might and have been shown in a lab setting to improve longevity of not just like petri dish bacteria, but actual mammals, right? One of the things I'm really interested in, if you found David Sinclair, type David Sinclair, Dr. David Sinclair into YouTube, you'll find some really interesting stuff. He is one of the researchers on the forefront of the longevity problem. He believes dying or biological aging is actually an engineering problem that we can overcome. And his lab specializes in the research of things like resveratrol, which is an antioxidant that you can find in wine that originates in the skins of grapes. And there are many other things like that. Aloe plants, ginger. I've recommended the ginger flavonoids for boosting testosterone for guys. Like there's some ginger in a tea and drink that every day. And in a laboratory setting, ginger has been shown to increase, daily intake of ginger has been shown to increase testosterone 17%. That's a big deal. You know, that you want to talk about being 30 in your 40s. That's 17% of your testosterone back is pretty awesome, especially if all you have to do is drink some ginger tea. Anyway, all that to say, we don't know much about, well, actually there's a huge body of evidence, but from a general public standpoint, we don't know much about how plant flavonoids affect us. And even more interestingly, processed foods, especially hyper-processed foods that are exposed to a lot of heat and oxidative processes and whatnot, they are significantly diminished in flavonoids. They're significantly diminished in the reactive compounds that exist in a lot of plant life. And so when we say cut down on ultra-processed foods, what we're really saying is not just cut down on the energy availability of the foods in your life that aren't giving you a lot of nutrients. We're also saying there might be something to some of the flavonoids that are naturally occurring in nature that are good for you, that might benefit you at the level of the DNA, that might improve your metabolic processes, that might enhance and lengthen your life. So I like that emphasis on the side of the Mediterranean diet. And honestly, I haven't covered that much in the show. I've had guests on the show who talk a bit about that, like Dr. Bruce Cooper, Dr. Adrian Chavez. We've spoken together about some of the powerful properties of plant flavonoids. However, that's not something you're going to hear in like the South Beach diet or the Atkins diet or even just the calories in, calories out method of weight loss, right? Who cares where your calories come? As long as you meet your macros, you've got this thing covered. But what goji berries have carotenoids that might be powerful for your longevity? Who cares? So anyway, I like that about the Mediterranean diet. How that might differentiate from my philosophy from the Defining Dad Bod perspective is it's hard to differentiate. They put a focus on red wine. People say Mediterranean diet, they think olives, some blue fin tuna, and a big glass of Merlot, right? In my world, what I think is important is I think it's important to take conscious stock of what you're currently doing with your nutrition. And I think it's important to make some swaps, some changes to those habits that are going to benefit you in the long run. Trading your beef jerky for sardines might be a powerful thing to do. Trading the occasional beer for a glass of red wine might be a powerful thing to do. Trading your bacon for avocado in the morning might be a powerful thing to do. Instead of drinking coffee every morning, have coffee one morning and ginger tea the next morning and swap that out every day. That might be a powerful thing to do for you. I think from a dietary perspective, it's important that we see diet as a noun, not as a verb. Diet needs to be something that we have consciously chosen, that we can make things a part of, rather than we go on a diet. I think that's the fundamental difference between the Mediterranean diet and the Defining Dad Bod nutrition philosophy. I don't want you to go on a diet. I think that's stupid. It's not going to last. Probably won't sell everybody in your family on it. It's not going to be here next year. You don't go on diets. Instead, I think it's important to understand what your current diet is and to make conscious decisions to make that better for you in a sustainable way. It's an iterative problem. This week, what did I eat? Look at all that. Okay, what can I do differently at breakfast? One thing. What's one thing I can do differently at breakfast next week? And do that and see how it sticks. If it sticks, if you like it, if other people in your family like it, it's not too expensive, blah, blah, blah. That's a good change, especially if it's adding omega-3s to your life and lowering your 6 ratio, right? Especially if it's adding carotenoids and flavonoids in your life, especially if it's lowering the amount of ultra-processed food that you're getting. And then next week, do the same thing. And next week, do the same thing. it's an iterative game. 10 years from now, what does your diet look like? You're not going to go on the Mediterranean diet today and 10 years from now still be following the Mediterranean diet. Whatever that means. By the way, nobody knows what the Mediterranean diet actually is. You can Google it. But again, that's an observational diet. Nobody created it. Anyway, that's the fundamental difference in my philosophy and diets at large, is that it's a process. And it's a process that you negotiate with yourself. It's a process that you negotiate with your social circle and your familial circle. It's also a process that might change as you grow, might change as you get older. Your proficiencies and things are different. I'll give you an example from my life and then I'll move on. So I recently learned that I wrestle with digestive issues that are complications of Ehlers-Danlos. And you can put a label on it. It's technically an IBD. I'm currently in the diagnostic process to find out if it really is ulcerative colitis or what name the medical community might give that. That being said, I had a drastic change in some of the things that I do on a daily basis for my own personal nutrition. And those changes were not spurred by a desire to change my body composition. They weren't spurred by a desire to improve my performance. They were spurred by a desire not to be in digestive pain at 3 a.m, right? If you told me 2 years ago I'd be eating some of the things that I'm eating now and not eating some of the things I'm not eating now, I would have been like, what? Why? Why would I do that? Because 2 years ago, I had the same body composition I do now. I wasn't really that concerned about making any changes from a dietary standpoint because my performance was great. Energetically, I felt fine. My body composition looked good and whatnot. And so, well, why change anything? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So anyway, all that to say, I think that process happens personally for every single person. I think that process is a personal thing that takes time and energy to develop and improve over time. And I think it's very, very hard for people. In fact, I believe it's impossible for people to look at what other people are doing or other cultures are doing or other, diet book writers say you should do, and to manipulate your entire world around that. I think it's impossible. I think those changes are irrelevant. I also think that not only are those changes irrelevant, they're short-term and unsustainable, and they don't take into account your personal experience. They don't take into account your genetic predispositions. They don't take into account your microbiome, your digestive tract, blah, blah, blah. And so I appreciate this question very much. By and large, I love the emphasis of omega-3s. I love the emphasis of carotenoids and flavonoids. I love the emphasis on healthy fats. As far as what that looks like in everybody's world, I don't think you need to jump on the Mediterranean diet bandwagon. I think you need to start with a good journal. And I think you need to look at different places in your diet where you can begin making swaps that you can live with, that your family can live with, that you're happy with, that would improve your omega-3 profile, get some more carotenoids and flavonoids in your life, and largely be something that's sustainable to you over time. Great question. Last but not least, let's get into hormonal health. This was a fantastic question asked by somebody who's interested primarily in psychological counseling. So I don't know exactly what problems they're coming to, or they could be depression, ADHD, it could be they're working through some childhood adversity, whatever the case is. But she says that she identifies that many of the problems that they're experiencing has to do with, or at least some of the problems they're experiencing has to do with hormonal issues that fundamentally stem from their nutrition and their lifestyle. And this is powerful. This is an argument that I made back when I very first started Defining Dad Bod, and I talked about the changes that a dad's body goes through when his children are born and what that looks like in little known research. And it wasn't just my opinion and my experience. My experience and opinion mirrored what I actually found in the research when I went to look for it, which is dad's testosterone drops significantly, precipitously, right after a baby's born, and it doesn't recover until his youngest child is age 4. And so the question is dad depressed? Or does he just have low testosterone? And then, what the heck do you do about that? Like, does it change the way you go about your life? Should you get on an antidepressant? Should you supplement with exogenous testosterone? Should you just, embrace the suck and keep moving forward and accept the change, right? There's a bunch of questions there. But I was fascinated by the thought. And this actually was predicated on something that I built to help me train my female premenopausal and menopausal clients, which was what I called the hormone pyramid. And if you're interested in looking at that, go to definingdadbod.com/hormones, and I've compiled all that there. But what the hormone pyramid basically does is it puts your hormones in a hierarchy and shows you how you can address those through exercise and nutrition. Now, There are a couple problems with this approach to health and fitness because it's not a whole picture. But when it comes to hormone optimization, what specifically can I do to improve my insulin, my blood sugar roller coaster? What specifically can I do to improve the way my cortisol, my stress hormone, functions in my daily life? What specifically can I do to help my sex hormones equalize themselves, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and then similarly with the thyroid? So I built this hormone pyramid, and my goal was to make it easier for me as a professional to understand what check marks, what list of things I could go through to prioritize the changes a client could make. Because they could come to me and they could say, I have all these problems, I have trouble losing weight, I can't do this, I can't do that, I get injured, blah, blah, blah. What should I do? And I could look at the list of possible things they could do, and it's like a mile long. Like, do cardio, lift weights regularly, do this for 6 months, sleep better, take a multivitamin, get more omega-3s in your diet, stop eating Twinkies. Like, there's a giant list, and the problem is, behaviorally, people can only make so many changes. In fact, we don't make many changes very well at all. You ask a person to do like one thing different for a week, oh my God, the likelihood that that's going to be around a month from now is very little without significant support and significant motivation. It's very, very hard to change your habits. So I came up with this hormone pyramid to explain the relationship between different hormones. And I say I came up with it, I drew the picture, but I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. There are people like Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Sandra Albright, I want to say her name is. I'm blanking her books in my bookcase here. They spoke a lot about, and their entire life's work is on, how do these hormonal systems interact together. So you can check out that information. We spent 5 to 8 hours of the show somewhere in there unpacking that, and there are quizzes you can take that are actually there to show you what nutrition and lifestyle things might be influencing your insulin system, your cortisol system. So that's definingdadbod.com/hormones. The short answer of it is, if your blood sugar roller coaster isn't smooth, if your insulin system is not optimized, then every hormone downstream is going to be affected by that. And so that's insulin. That's why we start with things like your sugar consumption, how active you are in a day, whether or not you're getting enough fiber, whether or not you're drinking enough water. And I talk about that in the TrueFit series, actually, when we talk about carbs and fats, the macronutrient difference, and how your blood oxygenation, your dependability on carbohydrates versus your ability to burn fats as a fuel source, how that manifests itself in your ability to lose weight. It manifests itself in your ability to have great energy through the day and not be fatigued. It manifests itself in your ability to recover from exercise and what kind of exercise you do and whether or not it's good for you. There's a bunch of ways that goes down. So I'd encourage you to check out the hormone pyramid, specifically insulin, that episode on insulin, and then in the TrueFit series, if you want to understand that from a dietary perspective, carbs and fats, you can check that out in our most recent work on that front. And then this is actually the mastermind that Gene Fleming referred to that we did back in August. I took a group of people through the hormone pyramid, and we did a weekly meeting on it to talk through the science of it and then to talk through the practical application of it. So that's insulin. Then cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone. The thing about cortisol is that it pulls resources from your other hormone systems, so that if you are constantly stressed, if you're constantly pulling those resources away, I'm not saying that you deal with stressful things, I'm saying that biologically you are asking your body to pull resources from its adaptive process, then cortisol actually affects testosterone and estrogen. I use this example. People tend to remember it and like it, that if you're running from a mountain lion, biologically, you don't need to make babies. You're not going to sexually proliferate if you're about to be eaten by a mountain lion. And that's really the core prioritization biologically of your hormonal system. If you're running from a mountain lion, that's cortisol, that's epinephrine. Get out of there. And then you can worry about testosterone and estrogen, right? Which is, sperm count and fertility and ability to grow a baby in the uterus. And biologically, it's set up that way. Cortisol pulls from the same resource pool that testosterone and estrogen do. And so if your body's constantly prioritizing the production of cortisol and you're pulling away from the resources that your body's going to use to build testosterone and estrogen, well, then your sex hormones get the short end of the stick. And then testosterone and estrogen are really interesting. For men, testosterone becomes more important. For women, progesterone and estrogen become more important. Those are really interesting because there are things that affect the sex hormone system all by themselves. I mentioned alcohol earlier. Devoid of the resveratrol, if you could distill the alcohol from red wine and the alcohol from bourbon and look at them side by side, it's the same thing. And ethanol has a role to play in affecting the hormonal system, right? And so if somebody's consuming too much alcohol regularly, what happens with their sex hormone system, for guys and girls both, it's affected negatively for both of them, is impacted by ethanol. And so that's part of the recommendations I make there. And then the thyroid's like, it's at the top of the pyramid because it's the most fragile endocrine system. It's the most fragile hormonal system. Your thyroid's a really tiny little gland right here. It's affected by everything. It might actually speak with the microbiome. It might actually speak with our small intestine hormonally or even chemically. Well, I guess hormones are chemicals, just biological. Anyway, it's affected by our immune system. It's affected by whether or not we've slept well. There's a bunch of different things that affect our thyroid. And so it's at the top of the pyramid because if you have not addressed all of the other hormones upstream from it, then it's just going to be a slave to whichever way the wind's blowing, right? Which kind of stinks because our current medical system will test the thyroid first. If you're feeling lack of energy, if you are obese, if you are, I don't know, your hair is brittle, and you come to your doctor and report these things, they're going to test your thyroid and then put you on thyroid medication. They're not going to address the fact that you're eating too much sugar regularly. You sleep like garbage, like you don't wake up at the same time, you don't go to bed at the same time, you're not getting enough sleep. That would be cortisol. You're over-consuming caffeine, you're over-consuming alcohol. That would be things like cortisol, and then your sex hormones. You're not lifting weights, you're not doing cardiovascular exercise regularly, you're sedentary, so you're not very active, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying those quickly, but those are on each side of the hormone pyramid. Each hormone that you address has two things you can address from a nutrition and lifestyle standpoint, and two things you can address from an exercise standpoint. And so I encourage you to check that out. I think that's a fantastic question. Again, that's definingdadbod.com/hormones, and we address that. I want to say we started addressing that about 2.5 years ago, and the compilation of that work is right there, quizzes and the podcast. And I would love to talk to anybody who's interested in speaking more about that. All that said, that's not the full picture of health and fitness. The hormones don't matter if psychologically you are unable to make the habit changes required to optimize those hormones. Because what you can't see at the top of the hormone pyramid is there's a brain on top of all of that. That's you. And your brain is significantly affected by the different things that are going on in your biological system. And so any changes you'd like to make, like cutting down on sugar, for instance, requires that your brain's on board. And I've worked with many people. They say sugar addiction might be a myth. I had a great conversation with Dr. Tro that's going to come out on the podcast this week, but he's from the Low Carb MD podcast, and we talked about whether or not carb addiction was a real thing. And I've worked with people in a clinical setting with clients trying to lose weight or trying to overcome different issues and stuff. And the idea of cutting down sugar in their life, man, they would rather me have asked them never to drink another beer. That's how intense it is. It's more intense than alcohol addiction for some people. Anyway, all that to say, there's a brain on top of the hormone pyramid. And a lot of the behavioral things that we've been talking through in the True Fit series, which is the focus on long-term health and fitness in 2020, we've started addressing how those things affect the hormonal system downstream and how we can get the mindset right, what psychological steps we can take to get us on board with ourselves and to address some of these things intelligently. So great question. I appreciate that. I agree 100%. If somebody comes into a psychiatrist's office and they said, hey, I'm depressed, I love that the psychiatrist is looking them in the face and saying, are you sleeping well? Let's talk about your sleep schedule a little bit. How about your exercise? How about some of your nutrition? Because we can put you on a medication
the free
to help
practical
you with depression.
advice
We
and
can do that.
conversations
However,
here
there are
remain
many things
unbought
biologically
and
that can
unbiased,
play into you
thanks to
being
the
depressed.
support of
And I think
listeners
it's
just like
important
you.
for to
If
get
this
all
episode
those
has been
things
helpful to
working
you,
for you
please
rather
share it
than
with
against
somebody in
you,
your life
in
who
addition
you know
to
it
the
will
help
benefit.
of
Then
medicine.
subscribe to the podcast
Great question.
and
Thank
leave
you
us
for
a
being one of those
raving
people.
review
Keep
to
up
tell
the good
others
work.
what value
Well,
Defining Dad Bod
that
has brought
was
to your health and
fantastic.
fitness
Thank
journey.
you guys for
And
bearing with
finally,
the technical
if you want more
issues. I
Defining
appreciate
Dad
you
Bod,
joining us
consider
live. I
joining our
appreciate
online
those of you
community.
who have
We send a
been
lot
in
of
the
free
faithful
perks and
40.
resources your
Rock.
way, and I, Coach
If
Alex,
you
go
aren't
live every
already
month
a
to
supporter
talk through
of the
our
free
listeners'
content
health
in
and fitness
Defining Dad Bod,
questions
I
to make
encourage
the
you to
practical
go to
science of this show applicable to everyday
definingbdadbod.com/donate
life. Everyone's
consider
welcome,
being
and we'd love to
either
have
a
you.
monthly
For more
pledger
information about
or,
joining the Inner
give a
Circle
one-time
or
donation.
becoming a
We
supporter
appreciate
of
you.
the
We
Defining
put
Dad
this
Bod
stuff out free
podcast,
into the world
go to
because we think it's valuable
definingbdadbod.com
and good, and I
/inner
hope
circle.
that,
That's
it's been valuable for
definingbdadbod.com
you on your fitness journey.
/inner circle.
Thanks for equipping us to continue to do it. So, this has been Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.
1, 2, 3, 4.